Today, I would like to tell you a very important and interesting story that many people in the world are talking about. And this story is not only about two powerful men from different countries, but it is also about how people speak, how they listen, and how they try to understand one another during a very serious situation that can affect millions of lives. This story is about a meeting that recently happened between Mr. Donald Trump, who was once the President of the United States of America, and Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky, who is now the President of Ukraine. And even though this meeting happened between two world leaders, it is not just about politics or government work, because it also shows us how people communicate, how they use their words, and how they show their emotions when they are under pressure. While listening to this story, you will not only improve your English skills, but you will also learn how real people, especially those in high positions, speak during serious conversations, and you will see how they express opinions, respond to difficult questions, and try to stay calm even when things become very emotional. You will also learn many new words and useful phrases that are often used when people talk about world events, serious problems, and international matters. So now, I invite you to relax, pay close attention, and let us begin this powerful and dramatic story. On a cold morning in Washington, D.C., even though the bright sun was shining up in the sky, the air still felt very heavy and serious, and it seemed like something very important was going to take place on that day. President Volodymyr Zelensky had just arrived in the United States after a long flight that lasted nearly 10 hours. And even though he looked very tired, he stepped out of the airplane wearing his usual military-style clothes. Because his country was still in the middle of a difficult and painful war, he knew that this meeting with Mr. Trump was very important, not just for him personally, but also for the people of Ukraine, who were hoping for more support, more help, and more understanding from the American government and its leaders. At exactly 10:30 in the morning, President Zelensky arrived at the White House, and while many cameras flashed and reporters whispered among themselves, trying to guess what might happen inside the building, Mr. Donald Trump was already sitting inside the Oval Office, which is the most important room in the White House where the U.S. President works. Mr. Trump, who looked confident, as always, leaned back in his chair with a small smile on his face, waiting for President Zelensky to walk in. And as soon as Mr. Zelensky entered the room, Mr. Trump stood up from his chair, walked toward him, and gave him a strong handshake. With a smile, Mr. Trump said, "Mr. President, welcome back. That must have been a very long flight, right?" And Mr. Zelensky, while nodding his head, replied, "Yes, it was a long flight, but I came here because this meeting is very important for both of us." After this short exchange, both leaders sat down in their chairs, while the cameras continued to record the meeting, and people from all around the world were watching it live on television and on the internet. Mr. Trump leaned forward, placed his elbows on the desk in front of him, and looked like he wanted to control the conversation, or at least make it seem that he was the person in charge of the room. Trump then asked in a calm voice, "So, tell me, Volodymyr, how are things going in Ukraine right now?" And President Zelensky, with a serious face, replied, "As you already know, we are still in the middle of a war, and we need more help from the United States, including weapons, money, and strong actions against Russia." At that moment, the conversation became more serious, and instead of giving a direct answer, Mr. Trump smiled again, looked carefully at Mr. Zelensky, and said slowly, "You know, many people believe that this war could have been avoided, and maybe if earlier conversations with President Putin had gone differently, we would not be in this situation today." After hearing those words, Mr. Zelensky's expression changed. His smile disappeared, and his face became very serious. And he replied in a respectful tone, "With all due respect, Mr. President, we did try to talk and find peace, but President Putin does not keep his promises." The room then became completely silent, and everyone could feel the tension in the air. As Mr. Trump gently tapped his fingers on the desk and said, with a small laugh, "I like leaders who know how to make good deals, because I believe that in every war there is always a possible agreement that can bring peace." President Zelensky then leaned forward looked directly at Mr. Trump, and said firmly, "And I believe that in every war, people are suffering and dying, and this is not just politics for me, because my people are living through this pain every day." This time, Mr. Trump did not smile as the meeting continued. The mood in the room became more serious, and both leaders started speaking in a more direct and emotional way, especially when the Vice President of the United States, Mr. J.D. Vance, joined the conversation. Vice President Vance looked at President Zelensky and said, "Mr. President Zelensky, with all due respect, I don't think it's appropriate to come into the Oval Office and argue in front of the American press. You should be thanking President Trump for trying to help stop this conflict." President Zelensky answered calmly but clearly, "I understand your position, but during a war, every country has problems, even yours. And while you have a large ocean to protect you, we are right next to the battlefield, and we feel the war every day." Then Mr. Trump quickly interrupted and said, "You don't know that. Don't try to tell us what we will or won't feel." Suddenly, the topic of the conversation changed, and people started talking about Mr. Zelensky's clothes because he was wearing military-style clothing, which he had been wearing since the beginning of the war, to show that he was standing with his people. Brian Glenn, a commentator who supports Mr. Trump, asked Mr. President Zelensky, "Don't you think it's disrespectful to come meet the President of the United States while not wearing a formal suit?" President Zelensky replied, "I will wear a suit when the war is over, but right now, my clothes show the struggle that my people are going through every single day." Even though President Zelensky explained his reason, some people still continued to criticize him, and this part of the meeting showed how people from different cultures have different ideas about how leaders should dress and behave. Then Mr. Trump said, "Right now, you do not have any strong cards to play, so you need to start earning them." To which Mr. Zelensky responded, "I am not playing a card game. I am very serious, and I am the leader of a country that is in the middle of a war." The conversation became more emotional, and both leaders continued to stand strong in their opinions. As Mr. Trump said, "You are taking risks with millions of lives, and you are also risking the start of a much bigger war. And honestly, it feels like you are being disrespectful to our country, because we have already supported you more than many people thought we should." Vice President Vance then added, "Have you ever really shown thanks? Because I think you are wrong." What was meant to be a friendly and helpful meeting soon became a situation full of misunderstanding, disagreement, and emotional tension, showing how difficult international meetings can be when people do not agree with each other at this point. The atmosphere in the room was very heavy, and President Zelensky looked deeply frustrated because, after flying for many hours across the world, he felt that instead of receiving support, he was being questioned and misunderstood. But even though things were difficult, he did not want to give up, because he knew he had to stay strong for his country and for the people who were depending on him. Mr. Trump then said, "Let's be honest, Vladimir. The United States has already given you a lot of help, more than any other country. We have sent billions of dollars, and now you come again to ask for more. So where does it stop?" Zelensky looked straight at Mr. Trump and answered with a calm but strong voice, "Mr. President, this is not just about money. This is about survival. My people are dying every day because Russia is attacking us. And if we stop fighting, we will lose our country." Mr. Trump then tapped his fingers on the table and said, "And if you continue fighting, what will happen? More war? More destruction? I don't like never-ending wars. I want peace." President Zelensky became even more serious and said, "Then help us win. Give us what we need." Mr. Trump shook his head and asked, "Do you really believe you can win against Mr. Putin?" And that was the big question, because everyone in the room knew that Mr. Trump had a complicated view of President Putin. Some people believed he respected him, while others thought he feared him. Then Mr. Trump said, "Putin is a smart man, and he understands strategy. So maybe instead of fighting him, you should try talking to him." President Zelensky looked shocked and said, "We did try to talk, but he doesn't listen. He wants to destroy Ukraine." Mr. Trump leaned forward and said in a soft voice, "If I were president, this war would already be over, because I could talk to Putin, you know that." Zelensky shook his head, because he had heard that before. Trump often said he could stop the war. But he never explained how it became clear that this meeting was not only about Ukraine, it was also about Mr. Trump's plans to become president again. And he wanted people to see him as the only leader who could speak to someone like Mr. Putin. Zelensky, however, just wanted real support, not political talk. The meeting finally ended. Both leaders had said what they wanted to say. But nothing really changed. President Zelensky walked out of the White House, and reporters ran to him. One reporter asked, "Mr. President, how did the meeting go?" President Zelensky took a deep breath, looked into the cameras, and said, "I came here to ask for help, and I still believe that America will stand with Ukraine." Then he walked away.